Hi guys, welcome to session 4. In this session we're going to be looking at selecting and grouping objects and transforming objects. Okay, here on the side I've made myself a customized tools panel. Like in our previous session when I taught you how to do that, I advise that you actually go and create a little custom tool panel for yourself, as I did. You can go and look at your manual or my previous sessions on how to do that again. It's also a great reminder and a practice session for yourself on how to create this custom panel. On my custom panel, I've put all the transformation tools and selection tools that we're going to need for this session. So we're going to start with a very basic, your normal selection tool. This tool allows you to select objects that you want to work with separately. You'll see that when I hover over objects, the line around the object becomes blue, and you know that if you click on it, it's going to select that object, and you can then go and move it or resize it or do with it whatever you want to for your purpose in the design. If you've done something that you didn't want to do or you made a little mistake, then you're just going to go and press Ctrl Z until it's back to where it was. That's the basic selection tool. It's just for moving objects around or for resizing it or for even rotating it. If you just go to the corner, it will make like this little arrow that shows that you can rotate it. Okay, cool. Let me just go back. Awesome. The next one is going to be your direct selection tool. It's very similar to your normal selection tool, as in you can select a shape and you can move it around. So it has the same capability of the selection tool, except you can also go and select anchor points. Now that's what you call these little blocks over here. It's called an anchor point, and the line that runs from the first anchor point to the next anchor point, this blue line over here, is called a path. So with the direct selection tool, you can work with your anchor points and your paths. So if you click on an anchor point, you will be able to pull just that anchor point or edit just that anchor point. If you pull on the little handle over here and you drag it in, it will change the shape of the shape that you're working with completely. So it gives you a little bit more freedom on working with certain areas of a shape that you've created. Let's say you've created a circular shape and you want to change that circular shape a little bit, then your direct selection tool would be the best option to work with. I'm quickly actually going to draw you a circle just so that I can show you what it looks like when you edit a circle. So I'm going to go to my direct selection tool. I click on the anchor point that I want to change, and I can pull it up a bit. I can move the little handle in a little bit, down on this side, or out a little bit even. So you can go and distort a shape and change it completely from a circle to whatever other shape you want it to be. Okay, cool. Let me just take that away. So that's your direct selection tool. The next tool is called your group selection tool. Before we can work with that, I'm just going to go back to my selection tool, and I'm quickly going to show you how to group a couple of shapes together. So I'm going to click anywhere on my page and drag so that I've selected all the shapes that make up this little man. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say group. Now all the shapes that make up this guy has been grouped, and I can move them together. I cannot edit any of these shapes separately now if I'm on my selection tool. The only way that you will be able to now go and edit any of these shapes separately is if you go to your group selection tool, and now when you hover over the shapes, you'll see that their outlines become blue individually again. So I can go and click on the hair, and then I can move just the hair, or I can pull on the anchor point and move it to the side. Okay, cool. So it's just that you're not technically able to edit the shape, but you can move it around when it's already been grouped. So that's very handy if you've grouped a lot of shapes together and you just slightly want to move something up or down, because it's not exactly where you wanted to place it. So that's your group selection tool. You can make use of that if you've grouped a lot of things together. Just going to ungroup it for us. So I go back to my selection tool, I select everything again, I right click and I say ungroup, and then all my shapes will be ungrouped again if you want to work with them individually. The next one is called the Magic Wand tool. Now, if you've ever been taught by me in Photoshop, you will know that I hate the Magic Wand tool because it's the easy way out, and in Photoshop it tends to make for really bad quality cutting or editing, because in Photoshop we work with raster images which are made up of tiny little pixels or tiny little squares. And if you use the Magic Wand tool in Photoshop, it tends to grab onto these tiny little squares, and then it makes your edges very unneat. In Illustrator, it's not the case. The Magic Wand tool selects the whole shape for you. Did you notice when I clicked on the hair now, it has selected the face as well? That is because, I just want to go back to my selection tool to show you. The hair is not just made up of this little area over here. It's made up of a big shape that overlaps the circular part of the face as well. So the Magic Wand tool, if you click on it, it will select everything that the Magic Wand tool is currently touching or that's overlapping with the shape that you've chosen. So please be very careful of that. So I'm going to use the shirt as an example. The shirt will work with the Magic Wand tool because that's the only thing that I'm touching when I select it. The neck, it's under and touching a lot of other objects. The ears are grouped, so that's why they are selected, because they're running through the neck and over the neck and touching it. Okay, so just be very careful of that. But if it's easy shapes that you're working with and nothing is overlapping each other or touching each other, then you can select with the Magic Wand tool and you should be absolutely fine. The next one is our lasso tool. The lasso tool works anything that the side of the lasso tool touches, it selects. Also note that it gives you the little arms and the anchor points as well, which you can then go and edit. So if there's a tiny little shape that you want to select, the lasso tool works really well for that. If you've got a lot of shapes grouped together, not grouped, but placed close to each other, and you just want to go and select something really tiny, the lasso tool works well for that. Okay, so that's your selection tools. It's your basic selection tool, your direct selection tool, your group selection tool, your Magic Wand, and your lasso tool. Familiarize yourself with all of these tools. You're going to be using them often, especially your basic selection tool, because you need to move around shapes a lot while you're editing. I'm just going to go back to my selection tool and group all of the shapes again by selecting all of them and saying group. There is something in Illustrator that you call the isolation mode. Now, you're only going to make use of isolation mode if you're working with a lot of shapes that are overlapping each other and that have already been placed into groups. Once you are in a group and you want to work with only one layer in isolation mode, you can double click on that layer twice. So double click on it twice and it will isolate the shape for you. Everything else seems like there's been a white layer has been placed over it. This is now the shape that's selected in the isolation mode. You can now go and resize it, move it around, do with it whatever you want because it's in isolation mode. You can go to your direct selection tool, you can work with the anchor points, change the shape of it, do whatever is required, any changes that you decided to make to it. And as soon as you are happy with what you've done, you can just double click outside of the shape and it will take you back to the normal mode, and then you're out of isolation mode. Okay, I'm just going to ungroup this again so that we can work with just one shape. No, actually I'm going to show you the perspective tools or the transformation object tools by grouping all of the objects together again. You'll see why I'm doing that. Okay, so the first tool that you have is your rotate tool. So when you've selected the shape or all the shapes that you work with, when you go to the corner over here, you'll see that your arrow changes to your rotation tool. And you can rotate this any way that you want to. That's your normal rotation. You don't need to be on the rotation tool for that. You can be on your normal selection tool. The difference is, and I'm going to show you now, if you're on your rotate tool, it gives you a little red marker in the middle of the guy's face now. You can move this marker to anywhere you want. Let's put it right over here. And if you then rotate, it's going to rotate it around that red tool. So wherever you, the red marker, sorry, wherever you move this red marker, oh, sorry, I didn't select it right. Wherever you move the red marker, the rotation will happen only around that area then. So that's the difference between the rotation tool and just using our normal selection tool to rotate. Just going to go back to my selection tool and click our little dude. Okay, let's put him in the middle. The next one is your free transform tool. When you click on your free transform tool, it will open another little tools panel for you. These are all your options that the free transform tool gives you. The first one is your constraint. If your constraint is selected, it keeps the dimensions of the image constrained. If it is unselected, you can go crazy and it won't keep the dimensions the way that it was. So the first one is our free transform tool. That is, you can transform it any size or shape or distort it any way you want. It's a free transform. It's exactly what the tool says it's going to do. The next one is your perspective tool, or your perspective distort tool, sorry. Now you can go and change the perspective of this little guy, move it to the side. You can rotate it a little bit. Oh, sorry, it went back to free transform. Perspective tool, sorry, I'm back on it now. You can pull here and it will distort the perspective of the guy. You can pull it on this side and drag it in a bit. If you want to morph it like completely, pull it up even more on this side. I'm going to give you guys an exercise later on where you can practice doing all of this and then see what it does to different objects. The next one is your free distort tool. You just click on it, go to the corner, and it will, oh, come on, man. Okay, cool. And it will free distort it for you. So you can go and play around with those and see how it works for you. This all depends, all of these tools obviously depend on what you're designing and what you would have to use it for. They all have specific reasons why you would use them and for specific shapes that you would want to distort in certain ways. They also work really well with text, but like I said, you'll have to play around with them and see what they do for you. Okay, cool guys. That's basically it for our selection and transformation tools. Like with the previous exercises, please go and play around with your tools. If you can, customize your tool panel for yourself. Go set up a new tool panel and yeah, play around with it. Just customize tool panel, put all your selection tools on there and play around. All of these tools are in your manual as well, so you can make use of your manual to remind yourself how they work and how to customize your tool panel. Okay, cool guys, see you in the next session.